Hello and welcome to David's Politics Show. No sooner was the ink dry on the IMF's 9-month so-called standby arrangement for Pakistan than the country's political and economic crisis seems to have reached a new apogee, with the likely postponement of elections nominally due later this year, and the conviction and disqualification of Imran Khan, the cricketer turned politician who was once the military's darling but has now lost their favor. What are we to make of all these developments in Pakistan, and what are the geopolitical implications for India and for the wider region of Pakistan's internal travails? To discuss all this, I'm delighted to be joined by my guest today, Sushant Sareen. Sushant is a senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi, and the author of a number of monographs, including Balochistan, Forgotten War, Forsaken People. And incidentally, we might well have occasion to return to the topic of Balochistan during our conversation today. Sushant, it's a pleasure to have you on the show for the first time. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, David.
So, just to set the stage for our conversation and perhaps to refresh the collective memory of our listeners who may not have followed every twist and turn of the saga in Pakistani politics, let me just go through the chronology real quick here. So, Imran Khan was ousted in April of last year. And then there was a failed assassination attempt in November. He was recovering from that. He was shot, I think, in the leg it was. So he was kind of recovering from that and basically sort of hung around, but was still creating all sorts of trouble, calling, senior army people, senior ISI people, all sorts of names. But things really got out of hand in May of this year, specifically on May 9th, after he was arrested. There were significant riots. Corps commander's house got vandalized. I recall there were some really bizarre scenes of people walking out of that house with peacocks, I think it was, or just unreal scenes. And in any event, in August, he was rearrested and now convicted in the so-called Toshakana case, sentenced to 3 years, and importantly, disqualified for 5 years. So that's kind of the brief chronology of how we got to where we are. Let me start by asking you, why do you think the military took so long to really get rid of him and silence him? After all, as I said, he was ousted over a year ago. And it was really only after the riots in May that one started to see really significant pushback. So why do you think they took so long? And do you think that we've really seen the back of Imran Khan, or is there still a kind of a slim possibility that the army might do something that they have done in the past with, for example, the Sharif brothers and also the Bhutto family, for that matter, which is to kind of throw them in the dustbin for a while, but reserve the right to resurrect them at some later point?
So I think the reasons why the military took so long to get rid of Imran Khan. Actually, they got rid of him in April, but they couldn't remove him from the scene. I think there were broadly 2 or 3 reasons. One was, of course, I think there was an element of fear within the army on the kind of reaction it would invoke on the streets of Pakistan if they took any precipitate action against Imran. I think we need to recognize that Imran enjoyed enormous amounts of support within the military at all levels, but even in the middle and junior level officers, also at the level of the enlisted men. He enjoyed a lot of support among the families of military officers and men. He enjoyed enormous amounts of support among the Punjab elite. Now, Punjab elite is basically the core support base, if you will, of the Pakistan army, in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this elite which kind of gives it a certain degree of legitimacy or legitimizes the military's role in politics for a variety of reasons. And Imran, to his credit or to his discredit, had very successfully divided, these various constituencies. which were earlier entirely backing the military, it divided. So I think there was this fear that there could be a backlash. The second reason was that some of it also had to do with General Bajwa's own politics and his own shenanigans to stay on in power. If you look at the case of Parvez Elahi, who was the chief minister of Punjab or later became the chief minister of Punjab, he was the man who was one of the allies of Imran Khan who had walked away from Imran Khan when the vote of no confidence was to take place. And just on the eve of the vote of no confidence, he suddenly turned turtle and started backing Imran. Now, it later transpired, and in fact, he went public and he said that he had gotten a call from somebody very senior, and later on, it transpired that that very senior person was none other than General Bajwa, who had told him not to switch sides. So Bajwa was trying to play his own games, so that he could get another extension, and he could position himself as the main player, the pivotal player, because he was also losing a lot of brand equity, if you will, with what was happening inside Pakistan.
Hmm.
And the third reason was that I think the army also felt that there was no clear line of succession. Imran Khan. So I think there was a element of lack of clarity. They thought they could probably also use Imran Khan, to get the the replacements in line, so that, because if you look at the PDM which had succeeded Imran Khan, they were all at sea in how to manage the Imran phenomena. So I would imagine that there were these three broad reasons. Now, can Imran Khan come back? If I was a betting man, I wouldn't really put my money on Imran Khan. Uh, One reason is, of course, Asim Munir. Uh, Asim Munir is going to be here till 2025, which means at least he's going to ensure that Imran doesn't win the next election.
Hmm.
Uh, and if Asim Munir continues to stay on, takes another extension, goes on till 2028, maybe even longer, then of course it's kind of curtains for Imran Khan, because I don't know if Imran will be able to retain whatever support he has right now for that much time. He doesn't really have a kind of a structured organization of the sorts many of the other organizations went which ran foul of the military managed to survive.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very much a one man show in a way, right?
Yes, it is, and he doesn't have any uh, heir apparent from within the family.
Hmm.
So that's another disqualification, if you will.
Right.
So that is one reason. But I think also that within the army, there is a very powerful bunch of people who have realized how dangerous somebody like an Imran Khan can be. How somebody like him can actually uh, literally, create a situation in which he can bring the house down. And it's a uh, no holds barred kind of a fight.
Hmm.
So I would be extremely skeptical of the army making a rapprochement with him anytime soon. At the same time, and again, this is probably a very very long shot. I think Imran continues to retain a lot of support within Pakistan. He's become, in some ways, more popular. He's got this halo of a hero who has stood up against forces more powerful than them. He has dared them, he has challenged them, he has taken them on.
Right.
That's like popular stuff, right?
Yeah, he's a bit of a martyr now, right?
Yeah, and now he's got the halo of a martyr as well. And then he and then of course there is the economic situation, and the economic situation is not going to get any better, regardless of all these nice fancy uh, dreams, wet dreams as I call them, of the Saudis pumping in money and massive investments coming in, and Pakistan is going to become like Switzerland in the next couple of years. I don't see that happen.
Hmm.
We've been down this road plenty of times in the past. And I think before anything gets better, things are going to get worse in terms of whatever adjustments will have to be made to both stay in the IMF program as well as try and stabilize the economy. As we are speaking, apparently today, the rupee has again, crossed the 300 threshold. It's in the open market. It's trading at I think 302 today,
Hmm.
rupees 302 to a dollar. So these problems are only going to grow going forward. Electric power tariffs are going to go up. Fuel is likely to become more expensive. Inflation is likely to remain high. And inflation in our part of the world is a killer.
And it's already at 40%, I think, right?
It's already pretty high. Yeah. Food inflation is even higher. So all in all, there is going to be a lot of people who will be supporting Imran Khan. Now, either the election is completely rigged so that you remove any chance of Imran, coming in through the back door, or Imran can't fight the election, but probably whoever he blesses to fight on his ticket, or whichever candidate he is going to be backing. Uh, and if that kind of a thing was to result, then I think there'll be hell to pay. So I think the army is going to try and ensure that that possibility does not arise.
Hmm.
So it's like I said, it's a bit of a long shot, but that is something which I don't entirely rule out. But like I said, it's a long shot.
Yeah, and you never know in Pakistani politics.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about these elections because we've seen the so-called caretaker government be nominated. The caretaker PM, interestingly, is himself from Balochistan. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about him and kind of his significance, and also if they are going to try and push these elections as far down the road as they can. What are they going to do though when with the IMF? Because the standby arrangement is only for 9 months, and then they're right back in the same hole they were in at the end of June.
Yeah. So let me just deal with the IMF thing first.
Hmm.
The IMF thing is still 9 months, and I think one of the reasons for this 9 month period was that the IMF was of the view that a new government will be in office by then, and then whatever new program has to be negotiated will be negotiated with the new government, and then that will have to be a slightly longer term, again a 3 year program at the very minimum.
Hmm.
So if this caretaker gets extended, as is likely to happen, given that they're going in for a new delimitation of the constituencies, then of course the elections get delayed, but you might still have a government in office, that is assuming elections happen at all, and they happen by around March, April. You will have a new government in office which can negotiate a new program with the IMF. Of course, the time period would be pretty constricted, but I suppose a lot of the negotiation work would already have been done. And then the new guys who come in will probably just have to, tinker around at the edges,
Hmm.
unless of course they are revolted by whatever has been agreed, and they decide that they want to go in for a completely new negotiated program, in which case all bets are off, the IMF will walk out, and all sorts of horrible things will follow. That's as far as IMF is concerned.
Hmm.
On the on the other issue of the new caretaker, look, he is from Balochistan, but he's a Pashtun. So, in a sense, he's a minority from Balochistan, and then as a Baloch or a person from Balochistan, he's a minority ethnic group in Pakistan. So, serves as a very good showboy. But more than serving as a good showboy, he is actually a showboy of the army. He is seen as one of those characters which the army has promoted, which the army has used. He's pretty articulate. He's pretty smart, but he's a quintessential uh, lackey of the military. His rise in politics uh, is owed entirely to his connections in the military. They have nurtured him, they have sponsored him. He runs propaganda campaigns for the military. So I don't think this guy was, by any stretch of imagination, Shabazz Sharif's choice, or Shabazz Sharif would have even wanted him to come. But I think Shabazz Sharif is so obsequious, and he is so pusillanimous in front of the army that he would have probably accepted whatever the army is going to push down his throat.
Hmm.
So clearly, this guy is the army's choice, and which means, as I think many Pakistanis are also now commenting, that even the pretense of a hybrid government is no longer there.
Right. So it's basically military rule in all but name.
It's a military rule entirely, okay, you've just got a guy, a civilian face as a prime minister, but that civilian is basically quasi military. As they joke in Pakistan, he's probably in the honorary rank of a captain in the Pakistan army. So I suppose that is something which is spooking a lot of people who think that if this might be the start of one of the long held wet dreams of the Pakistan army, that a government of technocrats will come in and set everything right. And again, I'll use the analogy of Switzerland. Pakistan will become a new Switzerland in this region because these geniuses, technocrats who come will put everything in place. And then, of course, we can go in for elections, but we'll make sure that whoever wins the elections does not, disturb the apple cart.
Right.
Again, they've tried this government of technocrats many times in the past. It hasn't really worked. It's not going to work now. And technocrats, if they are not going to take care of the politics and not going to be able to handle the politics of the country, then there is going to be hell to pay. So, in trying to save Pakistan, maybe if the army was to foist an extended caretaker government of technocrats on Pakistan, the army might be hastening the demise of Pakistan rather than the revival of the country.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the economic situation. As you mentioned, Pakistan is in a really really big mess. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal the other day about the kind of the attempts they're making to invite, especially the Gulf countries. They've already China's already been all over, and they've had their hands in the pie for a long time. But now the Gulf countries are really licking their chops at the idea of buying up all sorts of infrastructure. Are we seeing basically a fire sale of Pakistan's kind of potentially most lucrative assets in a kind of desperate attempt to live another day?
So, David, a couple of things. One, I think the Chinese are not pumping in any more money.
Okay.
If you look at all the problems that the Pakistanis have been going through in recent months, all that the Chinese have done is rolled over old debts. They've not given any new monies.
Hmm.
Um, and the only new money which is likely to come Pakistan's way is from the Gulf. I think the Saudis have announced something. They've given some money also to beef up their reserves. But the Saudis also are saying no more free lunches. So the Saudis are saying that, look, and the Emiratis have said it, that so have the Qataris for that matter, that we will advance you money against certain assets, that you give us an equity or you give us you farm out these assets to us, and we'll take them. Are they buying these assets on the cheap? I think so. And while there isn't a whole lot of transparency in many of these transactions, I don't know if you've seen those reports that one day suddenly these reports came in that people in the cabinet were saying that this ports deal with the a large part of the Karachi port was being given to Abu Dhabi,
Right.
and there were a lot of carping sounds that we are giving this on the cheap, because I think they were charging something like $200 million or something for the next 50 years. Some such
Hmm.
figure was being bandied about. There isn't a whole lot of transparency in that, but that was the figure. And people were saying that, look, we are selling this very cheap. It's not something we should be doing. We need to renegotiate the terms and conditions. This happened on one day, and the very next day, the Pakistanis backed down. I think they must have been given a kind of a dressing down by the Arabs, telling them that, look, if you're not going to go through with this, then everything else falls flat,
Hmm.
and nothing else is going to go through. So I think they're so desperate that they don't have a choice but to agree to give in to the demands of the Saudis and the others. Now, the Saudis, for example, have promised them that, okay, fine, we'll build this oil refinery. Now, the oil refinery is going to be something like $12 billion.
That's in Gwadar, I think, right?
That's in Gwadar. Um, and and out of the 12 billion, about 70% has to be funded by the Pakistani companies, which are going to be participating in that project. That's roughly about what, I don't know, do the math, about $8-9 billion.
Hmm.
Uh, where is the money for in the Pakistani coffers to fund that kind of development? So I don't know how that's going to go through. The same thing now we are hearing on this Recodic project, that the Pakistanis are saying that the Saudis will buy the share of both Barrick Gold, which is the main company which is part of it, and the shares of the government of Balochistan and the government of Pakistan and whichever other companies there are. So
Hmm.
there'll be an equal offloading of that equity to the Saudis. Now, maybe the Saudis are looking at some of these projects, but how seriously are they going to be looking at them? How viable are these projects? Are these going to be profitable projects or not? That's anybody's guess. We heard a lot about this copper project called Sendak, but frankly, Sendak didn't change Pakistan's destiny.
Hmm.
And I have some doubts on whether Recodic is going to do anything for them. But again, there is this kind of selling snake oil, if I might call it that. That suddenly a minister comes up and he says that, look, we are sitting on $6 trillion worth of minerals.
Hmm.
I don't know how they've come up with that figure. And then once you say 6 trillion, then you say, okay, even if it's not six, it's two. That's hell of a lot, right? And we are just talking about raw minerals. But once these come out, then production facilities and what have you is going to come up. So it is going to multiply manifold. So Pakistan is probably going to become richer than China, maybe richer than Saudi Arabia, richer than America.
Yeah, yeah.
So these are the kind of crazy dreams, bizarre delusions, hallucinations, if you will, which the Pakistanis undergo. And what happens is that when you start having these kind of dreams, then that basic fundamental reform that is required to stabilize the country and the economy is not going to happen. After all,
Right.
if tomorrow, David, you were to promise me $1 billion, I would say to hell with it. I don't need to do any work. I don't need to study. I don't need to do anything in life, right? Because the $1 billion is coming. But that $1 billion is a chimera. It's not coming.
Yeah, and not only is it not coming, and it's also like you said, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what creates wealth in a country, right? It's not just the resources under the ground; it's the institutions, it's the political culture, it's all of that put together.
But
Not
listen, David, what do you expect from people who are high school pass? What is the qualification of a military officer uh, to uh, to understand how modern economics works?
mm,
Uh, and that's a huge problem, isn't it? So either they're utterly clueless, and yet they want to run. For example, they've appointed a new chief of the PIA, their national airline, uh, but then and from the Air Force. Now, running an Air Force and running a commercial airline are two entirely different things,
yeah, it's not just that they're both planes, right?
right? At one level they're both planes, but at
Yeah.
another level, the dynamics of both.
are radically different, diametrically opposite.
Right, right.
Now, what makes them think that an air marshal can run an airline? I don't know. So, but they've appointed an air marshal. Why can't they find a professional to run an airline? But they will not, because the army wants to arrogate everything to itself. Now, the problem is that either the army guys are utterly ignorant and stupid and don't understand economics, or they're utterly and stupid at fly by night operators who want to make a quick buck and then run away are going to, lead them up the garden path, make them sign contracts which are going to cause even bigger problems. So, whichever way you cut this thing, it's not going to be looking good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this raises, in a way, a larger question, which is, what is the kind of the strategy behind the idea of Pakistan in 2023. I've been reading some books on Pakistan's involvement in the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, etc. And I mean, it was clear, like for example, in the 70s, Pakistan played this role as a kind of jumping off point for Kissinger and whatnot. And China was kind of the thing there, but nobody needs Pakistan for that now. In the 80s, it was its role in terms of, again, kind of staging area, I guess, in a sense, for the opposition to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. After 2000, it was in a way supposed to be a kind of an ally in the fight against the Taliban, although it didn't really play that role very much. But what is the strategy now? I mean, where is Pakistan going to get its external support?
I don't know, and I think that is the big question which is confronting the Pakistanis themselves. They still think that they can play, the great powers against each other and carve some space out for themselves. For example, a few months back, in fact, even a couple of years back, um, there were people like Imran Khan who would say that, if you want, we can once again mediate between the United States and China.
Hmm.
We can play the role which we played way back in 1969. But the Chinese and Americans don't need them as mediators or as facilitators anymore. They can talk to each other directly.
Right.
But again, then the Pakistanis think that, okay, fine, maybe there'll be new regional alignments, Russia, China, Iran, and then we'll also fit into that. So to hell with the West, we'll go with these guys. But what do you bring to the table? I don't think there is any clarity in Pakistan on what geoeconomics means. Now, for example, and I've often written about this, David, the Pakistanis keep saying that, look, we'll become the bridge between Central Asia and South Asia and West Asia. Okay. Bridge to where?
Yeah.
Pakistan is in one end of South Asia. South Asia is India.
Hmm.
But with India, you have very bad relations. So you're not a bridge. No Indian is going to trust anything coming from Pakistan into India. So you're a bridge to what? You're a bridge hanging in midair. It doesn't make sense anymore. But somehow, the Pakistani mind is so obtuse that it simply cannot think this thing through. So I think they really need to think, and they keep still talking about how pivotal their geographical location is. But forget about geographical location, the world has moved on. It doesn't need you for what it needed you 10 years back, 20 years back.
Right. Right.
So unless there is some new, relevance which Pakistan develops, I don't see it getting any sugar daddy anymore. I think the Chinese sugar daddy is a lot more exploitative than what the West was. The West used to give a lot of free lunches to the Pakistanis. The Chinese don't. The Chinese
Absolutely.
give them nothing for free. They extract a lot of money from the Pakistani. The Pakistanis can never accept it because of their all-weather friendship and stronger than steel, sweeter than honey, and whatever else you want to say about that friendship.
Right.
So you can't really put the truth on it. But I think the Saudi gravy train has also stopped. The Emiratis are not particularly fond of the Pakistanis. And they harbor a grudge against the Pakistanis for ditching them as far as Yemen was concerned.
Hmm.
So I think that gravy train is also stopping. So I think the Pakistanis really need to wake up and smell the coffee, but I don't think they're going to do that.
Right. Let's talk about India for a second and how all this affects India. You're in New Delhi. You have a good sense of where kind of the Pakistan situation is, to the extent to which the situation there is affecting Indian political discourse. My sense seems to be that Pakistan has kind of, which during the Cold War was enemy number one together with China. They kind of disputed the top spot, and now Pakistan has kind of degenerated into just being something like a nuisance, strange kind of bizarre act on its northwestern border. Have the Indian elites kind of stopped worrying about Pakistan and everyone's just focused on China?
Yeah, I think the focus has shifted to China, but that does not mean that people are not worried about Pakistan anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but not worried in the way we were in maybe 10 years back. Now the worry is more of, as you very correctly put it, this nuisance, this leech which is trying to suck something out of us. Um, i- it's in a very pejorative way that Pakistan is looked at now. It's seen as a threat, but more as an insidious kind of a threat rather than a very potent threat. The Pakistanis don't like this. They want India to see them as actually the most dangerous threat that confronts India. But I think, as far as the Indian policymakers are concerned, the focus has primarily shifted to China.
Hmm.
So one is that. The second is, um, given the way, given the past history with Pakistan, and the entire communal issues that get dovetailed with Pakistan, I think it will continue to be a factor, but again, not with the kind of salience that it had in the past. I think that's kind of changed. Now the competition, the contestation, the confrontation focus is primarily China.
Yep, that's where the attention seems to be these days from not just in India but around the world. Well, Sushant, you've been very generous with your time. Before I let you go, I want to remind our listeners where they can follow you. Number one, on Twitter, where your handle is at Sushant Sareen, and also on YouTube. You've been a guest on Strat News Global a couple of times, and also on the YouTube channel of the Hindustan Times, where there's a whole playlist called the South Asia Diary. It's a great playlist. I really encourage my listeners to check it out. So it's been great fun, Sushant. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, David.